Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Bryan Tann, and this is another edition of Tann Talks. All right, what's going on, everybody? I am Bryan Tann, as always, your host of Plotaholics Presents Tann Talks. And joining me as she does every Monday, well, each time we do it, Tann Talks, is Melinda D. Melinda rocking out the beanie squad today.
My hair is a hot mess.
That's all good. Mine is too, which is why I'm always wearing one. So it's Monday, which means we're talking the one, the only, the Winchesters. All right. And I'll tell you the truth. I was really, really concerned last week when we were first talking about the show because, it really goes into a strange dynamic. And we talked a lot about this last week. We talked about the fact that, number one, John knew nothing about the Men of Letters at all. The Men of Letters was a brand new thing that showed up in season 10, which is why the boys had the bunker that they lived in for the final 5 years, which I really appreciated because it gave them a central base of operations. It gave them a home.
Yes.
And I really, really appreciated that.
And I will say, going back, because I'm doing a rewatch of the series with my son,
Mhm.
there is like one or two times where you see the symbol for the Men of Letters in earlier seasons, like a season or two before, but that's
Right.
it. There isn't.
Right. It's definitely one of those blink and you miss it
Yes.
until we actually get to it. So that was among the multitude of things that we had issue with, not to mention the fact that John did not know that Mary was a hunter.
Yes.
That was something that we found out long after. And so we really went into this very, very hopeful as Supernatural fans. And none of it, especially in the first episode. Now, to be fair, and a lot of folks said it in the comments during our initial live stream, is that most shows have that difficult first episode.
Yes.
Really, the first episode in any series, what it's literally there to do, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, is to get you to come back to see if it's going to get any better. That's
Right.
literally what those episodes are for. They're there to make sure that, hey, is this going to be good or not? Is this something that I can deal with? That's what those first episodes are there for. And I'll tell you the truth, this episode, it brought me back because I wanted to see if it was going to be as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I'll tell you what, this episode was good. I liked it. The one thing that I liked and I disliked about it, and I want to sort of get that out of the way first, is that it really took us to the classic supernatural monster of the week,
Yes.
which allows us to not only get to know our characters, but for John, who is, granted, yeah, he's a Vietnam vet, but he doesn't know thing one about hunting.
Yep.
We don't know about this new lore that has become new lore now.
Yep.
So it's almost like we're learning with John. So these monsters of the week, even though there have been multitudes of times that I have been anti-monster of the week, it gives us a chance to learn these characters. It gives us a chance to learn along with John. And this is the first time we really see it, that it's really dedicated to that. We've got what they're working toward. And now we're getting to know these characters better. Now, what did you think of this second episode?
Still not my favorite. Like, I'm still having a hard time getting into it.
Okay.
I know, like, you had messaged me and said, "Hey, I'm all in now," and I was like, "Okay, great." And I went into it with high expectations, and I just didn't have it's. It was all right. It was better than the first episode.
Way better than the first episode.
Totally. It just didn't suck me in the way I was hoping it was going to, um, which still leaves me a little concerned for episode 3, but we'll see when we get there.
You know what? I'll
No,
tell
it
you the
wasn't
truth.
awful. It just, I don't know. I'm having a hard time getting into it.
I hear you, and I'll tell you what. I'm not even gonna lie. I ended up going into episode 3 because I was just really, really tired. I didn't feel like moving.
Right.
I just laid there, and I ended up watching episode 3. And I think that we're getting to a point, and we'll talk about it next week, where this is a show that does get better as it goes. You know what I mean?
It was good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it was, it was better than episode 1 for me, but still not there.
I hear you. So this episode is titled "Teach Your Children Well." And the one thing about this episode basically sees we start off, and once again, this is classic supernatural. We start off at this commune in Topeka, Kansas, and we see a guy and a girl that just walked away from one of those old school hippie drum circles that they had at this time, and
I hate to break it to you, we still have hippie drum circles.
I'm okay with that. Do they live on communes?
I haven't been to any on a commune, but I've been to hippie drum circles, so.
Fair enough. So they show up and we see them see this guy and this girl walking in the woods. This guy sees his dad, and then he's gone.
Yep.
And of course, it takes us into now John and the crew go back to the Winchester garage. John has this huge fight with his mother in front of his friends. And it's very interesting to see how now I have to say flat out that John's mom is starting to kind of grow on me, because I really like the fact that every time we see her, she's wearing the jumpsuit and the handkerchief. She really looks like the female empowered worker. I really like that look, because even to this day, you don't see a lot of women mechanics.
Right.
So I really like seeing her, in the 70s as this empowered, mechanic. And she's doing what all moms do. She's trying to protect her son. She knows her son has to take this journey. She don't like it, and she's trying to protect him. And of course, John, being a hard-headed young male, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
No matter what.
I was trying to remember, like, we talked about Millie. She's mentioned in like an episode. We don't really find out. They don't talk much about their mom, their dad's mom, in the main show, in the parent show. I'm trying to remember if it was ever established. I don't think it is, that she had a garage, which would
it wasn't
had
it
John.
really wasn't.
It would have given John the, we know John works on the Impala himself, but we don't really get the impression that that's a original family business, I guess is the best way to say that,
We really don't. Like, we just assume, like, only thing we really know about John is that he was a Marine Corps vet. That's right. That's literally
when he met Mary.
Right, and he met Mary when he came back from Vietnam.
Yes.
That's it. That's what we know. So none of that other stuff is there. Now, to me, it was sort of thrown out that his mom was like, the typical 60s housewife type, late, 50s going into the 60s housewife type. That's sort of how it was implied a little bit.
Yeah, you got like the single mom raising a boy in the 60s kind of thing.
Well, yeah, even before she ended up being the single mom, when we see Henry leave for his Men of Letters meeting, right. And, he has a couple of seconds with her, and she comes off as that typical Leave It to Beaver 50s, 60s housewife. She stays home while he works. Now, we don't know if that was the case, and then because he disappeared, she had to do something, but in those few seconds, we don't get that idea that she was a mechanic.
True.
You know what I mean? So we've already retconned from the primary timeline. Hey there, Anita. Anita Stewart. I'll tell you what, man. Much love to you, Anita, because Anita shows up for everything. Every time the Plotaholics has a new video, she's there.
I love it.
So
It gives
I
us
do
something to
too.
interact with, and I love that.
Absolutely. So now I will say, I did move on to episode 3, but we're sticking with where we're at now.
Yeah, I haven't seen episode 3 yet, so
All
it
right.
went
Well,
to
I
go
mean,
on, and I'm like, I have to go to bed.
and you know what though, and I'll tell you what. I think that as we go further along, I think that I'm predicting that this show is going to get better and better for sure.
I think you're right. I really do. It's really I'm hoping that because I really need to be pulled into this, and I haven't been. And yeah,
I
we'll
think we're
see.
I think we're really getting there. I really do. So we find out and we start to see Mary is acting real kind of dictatorish. And we find out,
Very Dean.
she's acting very Dean, very John.
Yes.
And we come to find out, and it's actually said to her, she's called out and said, "You're acting just like Samuel." So it's like, so this is where Dean gets it from his dad and from his grandfather, which is why he's such a dick
Yes. And
sometimes.
and you did get that in the Parent episode too, when we had the fantastic Mitch Pileggi playing
Dude,
Samuel.
Mitch Pileggi, I have to tell you something about Mitch Pileggi. I have had Mitch Pileggi in my life since the movie Shocker. Okay, it's so criminally underrated. How
Remember that
great
I know that movie.
Shocker is a Wes Craven film that came out in the late '80s. I think it was right after. I think it was about a year or so after Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And that was the last time that Wes Craven had anything to do with the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise until New Nightmare.
Okay.
And Shocker shows Mitch Pileggi as he's a serial killer who he's a TV repairman, and that's how he finds his victims. And the hero of the story dreams about him murdering his family. And when he goes to his house, he finds out that his mother and his younger siblings have been murdered.
Okay.
And he finds out who the guy is because he confronts the guy in his dream. So when they end up catching Mitch Pileggi, he's put on death row. And all he asks for his final request is not a meal, but a television. And he's doing some satanic ritual with the TV. So then when he's faces the electric chair, his spirit is essentially he's able to his spirit lives on. So he's like jumping body to body, and the guy who caught him is trying to catch him. He can actually like travel through electrical currents and stuff. And at one point, he's like traveling through the TV. So when the two guys are fighting, they're actually fighting through old TV shows. It's actually pretty funny.
This sounds trippy.
It is a trippy ass flick, but it's really, really cool. It's a cool flick. If you ever get a chance, you got to check it out. Shocker, starring Mitch Pileggi.
Okay.
So Mitch Pileggi, I think he really embodies Samuel very well. That big, gruff, mean guy. You know what I mean? So Mary is being like real dictatorish to the point where, Carlos is like kind of just he ain't feeling the attitude, and Latika is kind of like she's just trying to be nice, trying to keep everyone together.
Yeah,
John's
I really
just
like Lata as a character.
Latka is a great character.
Yeah,
I like
Lata's
her a
definitely
lot.
growing on me.
She really is. Even John, like her and John are growing on me a bit more than the others a little bit. Like Carlos.
You know what I think it is for me is part of why I'm struggling so hard to get into this is
you don't like anybody but her.
No, it's not that. It's getting used to having 4 characters to keep track of
instead of 2.
And or consistently.
Well, technically 5. Technically 5 because Ada is involved as well. So
but
you've
I don't care about these characters yet. Like I'm starting to like Lata and Carlos, but I'm not like I cared about Sam and Dean from the outset. And I care about John and Mary in that if we don't have John and Mary, we don't have Sam and Dean. but I'm
Right.
having a hard time because I don't care about them yet.
Right.
And I
I hear
think
you.
that's what it is.
And I'll tell you what, this episode, and we'll go on with the character stuff. So we end up seeing, that they show up and they're doing the undercover thing, and we have that funny moment where Carlos makes John's ID, and his name is Mick Fleetwood,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny. So we're getting a little bit of the OG series, coming out,
Yep.
which is kind of funny. Like when I first dealt with it, when I first experienced it, I was like, oh wow, really? And then it's like, but the boys had to have gotten it from somewhere. So okay. And Anita, of course, saying Carlos grows on you as the season goes on, you learn more about him. And I'll tell you what, by the time we go into episode 3, I do like Carlos a little bit more.
Okay.
Carlos is kind of like a fungus. You hate him at first, but once he grows on you, you can't get him off. He's basically the cordyceps of Supernatural in a
Oh,
lot of ways.
well, hey, okay.
Because here's the thing with Carlos is that he's definitely, I think what we're getting is that where Mary does the hunting thing.
Right.
She's a hunter. That's what she does. Carlos is like the smooth talker, but he can also forge their stuff that they need. And then Laka is their lore expert. And then you've got Ada, who is their witch essentially. So basically, all of the skills that the boys have, these 5.
And all those peripheral characters, they're not peripheral right now. They're main characters. It's not like they have to call Bobby or call what's her name that did the psychic that
the hot one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember her name either. The one that had her eyes burned out. Thanks a lot.
Yes. And then she shows up again at the end when Dean is dealing with the whole Michael crap.
Right.
Her. They don't have to call her and say, hey.
Everyone is already here.
Yes.
And they're ready to go.
Yes. It's convenient.
Right. It really is. And convenience isn't a bad thing.
No, it's not. It's just different, and I'm not used to it.
It's actually a bit more in the way of efficient. All that time that you would, especially in the 70s when you couldn't make phone calls to people as simply as you can now.
That's true too, and I think that's probably my other problem is I'm framing it in a modern context and forgetting that it's not.
It's the 1970s. Things were a lot different back then.
Yes. I think that's probably my other issue is I'm like, why don't they just get on their phone and look? Oh, wait, they can't.
Oh, wait, yeah. And we actually have to use like maps to get somewhere. And,
Yes.
So they are looking through, and we actually have a really, really good, before we get to the episode, I want to talk about the Ada and Millie interaction for a moment. If we may, because Millie, her main issue is that she doesn't know where John is gone. He's gone for a week, and she hears absolutely nothing. Then he comes back, and they're all pissed off at each other. Yeah. Millie shows up, and she, number one, Ada shows up and immediately offers Millie, the address and phone number to get in touch with John just in case. Here's where he's been. Yep, here's where he's going. Just so you're aware. And then she lets it slip. Well, not lets it slip, but basically tells her that she knew Henry and how she knew Henry. And I really love how she just looks to the jasmine vine and just goes, "Oh, this is beautiful. Can I have some?" No, take it all. Henry planted it, and I don't even know what it does, and it just takes care of itself. She goes,
"Yeah, I don't even know what this plant is."
Yeah, and she goes, "It's jasmine. It's for protection," which I think sort of helps to settle Millie's anger, because the one thing we got to remember is that Millie is doing a lot of learning here too.
Yes,
she's learning about what happened with Henry through John. And I think that's another reason why she's getting upset. Number one, John is chasing ghosts, but also if John is getting answers, she wants them too. Because, come on. This is a woman whose spouse, best friend, lover is gone. Just disappeared.
Yep. Ran out on her. Or she's ran out on her.
Right. And she's got to wonder why. Was there another woman or did something happen to him?
Right.
So I really appreciated that interaction because it gives Millie a little bit of peace,
Yes,
I think. And it helps her to understand what John is going through just a little bit more.
I agree.
So so the crew end up going to this commune after meeting up with the victim Barry's father, and they start to do their thing. And of course, Mary, once again, she can't listen to nobody. It's got to be all her way. They decide that it must be a mimic, and Mary's like, "Yeah, it's a mimic. There's no way it can be anything else. It's just a mimic
Would you
because this
also
is what it
picture
looks
the
like."
D&D mimic in like a chest with the mouth and tongue? Or was that just me?
Oh, I did about picture that mimic. I really did.
Okay.
And then it's like, oh, well, it's a different type of mimic because of this, and this. And look at the green, but it might not. No, it's a mimic.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, Mary,
It
seriously?
might not be. Too bad you're wrong. What?
Yeah, we don't even have all of the info yet. So she goes, listen, John, go get. And I love how, yeah, the piping at the motel is all copper. All right, go get the pipe.
Convenient.
Very convenient. Like, wow. Like, I really, if I cared enough, I would definitely do a Google search to see how much piping was copper back in the 70s.
Probably most of it. I don't think PVC was that popular then.
That's true. It really wasn't. It probably wasn't even a thing yet. But I mean, I'm surprised they didn't use other forms of metal because copper erodes very easily. You ever see a penny turn green?
I'm sure there has to be a plumbing reason why it was like that.
Yeah, I can go with that.
I don't know that I know what it is.
Right.
I'm not,
Yeah. If my grandfather were still alive, he was the journeyman plumber. So, and of course, he tried to take me on a plumbing job with him, and I almost threw up because pipes are gross.
Are gross.
They are very gross. There are nasty things that live
Disgusting.
with them. There are nasty things that live with them. When things go into pipe, they are now nasty. Okay. Period.
Yep.
So they discover that this creature is actually known as Latunda. And I really, really love this lore. Latunda was was an abusive mother that kept her children basically separated from all society.
Right. I
When
talk
her
about every kid who's like, that's my mom.
right, but she was a monster. And then when she
Yeah.
decided that she did not want her children to run, her children finally got sick of her and tried to hobble her so they could get away. She caught up with them, killed them, and then buried them in her garden. And now she has to capture children to feed her children.
It's funny. I was just telling my kids I'm in the process of building a big 16-foot garden in my yard. And I'm watching this last night with my husband, and I was like, kids ain't careful. They're going
Might
to
have
go
to
in the
put
garden.
you. Okay, so here's Anita. So pipes were, of course, copper back then, and they developed pinholes, which is why they're plastic now. That makes a lot of sense. So Latunda buried her kids, and then she ended up becoming more plant than person because her kids became vengeful spirits, I would assume, because they were killed in the way they were. So now, to feed her children, because they're pissed at her, she feeds on disobedient children. So, who's our disobedient child at this point in time? Ding, ding, ding. It's John, because
Johnny
mom doesn't.
boy.
So, of course, Latunda shows up wearing a dress, talking to John. And it's like, that should have been red flag number one.
Well, I wasn't sure. I was like, all right, well, we've got the address, right?
Yes,
We know
she
that
gave the
obviously
address.
this is the address. So this could be Millie. But then when she said, and you're the reason your father ran out, I was like, okay, this is
That's the monster. Not to mention the fact that she brought up Mary and the crew. And he goes, yeah, I don't recall telling you their names.
Yeah.
But for me, it was the fact that she showed up in a dress. Because we have not seen Millie wear a dress.
Oh, that's true.
That's at least the way it hit me. We ain't seen that woman wear a dress the whole time. And I'm sorry. If you do a job where you have to regularly wear coveralls, a dress is not going to be comfortable. So your typical wear is going to be boots, jeans, and a shirt.
Yeah, and on top of that too, I didn't even think about this until just now. Is Mary's dress when they show up to the commune?
Yeah, Mary's dress is fire, man.
Anybody else think that Mary's dress looked an awful lot like her
nightgown? Yes, it
that she
did.
gets lit up as.
It looked just like the nightgown.
I thought
That's
that was it when
exactly
I
what I
first
was
saw it, and then
thinking.
I saw it a
I
little
was
more
thinking that
flowy.
too. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, man. People's gear in the '70s was lit, man. I'm on board with that gear, man.
I loved
I,
Lotta's skirt. I'm like, I need that in my life.
dude, Lata is fire. She's becoming my favorite character.
Yeah, I really did
She
pair like
really
the
is.
character.
She is just such a fun character, and I love her so much. Like she is so great. So they show up. I'm sorry. So they don't show up. Basically, jump. They get back because they realize, crap. Mary realizes she screwed up, and they rush back and they discover John is gone. But Latunda leaves behind the calling card, all those flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So they go back to the forest. That's how they're able to find her lair. Now, the one thing that I definitely need to bring up with this episode is that the Latunda character is not native to the US. This whole thing is not native to where they are. So, and this does become a big deal, at least up into the next episode. Like I'm literally resisting very very hard not to keep watching on because it's just getting that good. But so eventually, what ends up happening? They figure out how they can kill her,
Okay.
and they take her out in a very very supernatural esque fashion. By the way, like
Yes.
this episode is definitely old school supernatural,
Yes.
which isn't a bad thing and it's not a good thing. The one thing about this show that I really would like, and I hope that they start to do it in later episodes, is that it starts to establish its own kind of style. Like, granted, you
Right.
have to keep, and this is why a prequel series like this or continuation series like this of a beloved IP is difficult because, on one hand, you want what's familiar, but on
Yes.
the other hand, you want it to have its own identity.
Right.
And you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's a very fine line.
And the supernatural fandom can be pretty rabid. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
for the most part, unlike, because I know, we have the Star Wars podcast too, and Star Wars fans are a different breed than Supernatural fans. Supernatural fans are very
Loyal.
loyal and forgiving and accepting of everybody
Of
all the
something
time,
different.
right? Of
Yeah.
everything. But this is just, um, it's just different.
It really is. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, Star Wars fans. I mean, you look at, and we talked about this when we talked about the Mandalorian and the was it like a week ago? Not this last week, but the week before when Ahmed Best returned. That man was essentially like to the point where he was contemplating suicide. They ran like Jake Lloyd is like left acting completely. So you
Yep.
saw Star Wars fans act toward the prequel trilogy. Now, after the sequel trilogy came out, now it's like, oh, maybe the prequels aren't that bad. And but even just how like evil they've been toward the sequel trilogy, even with stuff they like Princess Leia. So I think with the supernatural community, I think a lot of us, it's like we want this to be good. And when it's not even so much rage, it's disappointment.
Right. And that's why I don't want to say it's bad. It's just not, I don't know. It's just not hitting the points for me yet.
Right. So one thing that we end up seeing when this episode ends is after John makes up with his mother, we see Ada taking a potion and doing some crazy writing, like she's gone into a trance and doing her writing and stuff, which is really, really cool. And I know what she's doing, so we'll save that for next week. But we see,
Spoilers.
yeah. But what we also see is the Akrita with a leader, and they bring something into a vial, which turns out
It
they're
looks like
taking
they're getting it from
they're taking the essence from where Latunda
Latunda.
died,
Yeah.
which is very interesting.
At first, I thought that was Ada.
I can understand that. I mean, but
But the fingers, then you got a closer up of the fingers because they've kind of cemented Ada as she is the, our witch character.
She's our magic user. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're very ingrained in, was it Dean says, why is it always witches? They spill their body fluids everywhere. I hate witches.
Yeah.
So she's not that kind of a witch that we know of yet, at least as of episode 2.
Right.
Um, so I
Well,
think that's a, trying to keep an eye on that, and that's why I was like, "Oh, maybe that's her." No, no, I was wrong. It's
no,
not.
it's definitely not her. And I'll tell you what, this episode, and that really caught my, I was kind of into it, but that is what made me say, all right, I'm interested now.
Right,
When that happened, that's what really grabbed my interest. Because now we're learning more about the Akrita. They're not just a name now.
right.
So I have to say, this episode 2 was definitely a much better episode. Was it without its problems? No, absolutely not. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. But I'll tell you, this episode did a great job and sort of sucking you back in.
Yes.
Like if you left after the first episode saying, all right, I'll give this another try, it's like, it can't get any worse, but whatever. It sucks you in because it's like, all right, I'm feeling rewarded. And if you go back to it and be like, all right, I just want to see what this train wreck is about, it's still sucking you in. And I'll tell you what, and I think that was another part of the reason why I skipped to the next episode to see if I felt the same. And I did. But we're talking about this particular episode. Um, tell us what did you think about this episode overall? Like, what were your thoughts with this episode overall?
So overall, like I said, I think it's better than episode 1.
Yeah,
I like that we're learning more of the characters. We're getting to know a little bit more about kind of their personalities. I don't think we really know if you're not a big like period music fan. I think some of Carlos's comments get lost.
yeah,
Um, and so I think I'm having a hard time connecting with these characters that I don't know that much about yet. And I get it. I'm only in episode 2, and coming out of 15 seasons Supernatural, I'm like, I knew everything I needed to know about Garth in 5 seconds.
right,
And Bobby and Ellen and Joe and all the stuff we learn about them over time, is great. But I knew enough about them in the beginning to say, okay, I'm comfortable saying I like these characters. And I'm
right.
just not there yet with these characters.
I'll,
I like that we finally, I don't know if I like that we saw what the Akrita, assuming that was the Akrita at the end there, that we see what they look like. I think things are always like, most horror. It's scarier if you can't put a face to it.
right.
The Akrita, that's this big bad, and they look like giant smoky spiders.
I'm afraid of spiders.
Oh yeah, no, and I get that, but I don't know how much of that is going to detract from this. Well, they're devouring entire universes, and they're a threat to the the multiverse.
Right.
How can a smoky spider be a threat to the multiverse? So I don't know yet if that is going to kind of add to their mystique as being this big bad or not.
Right.
If I'm being perfectly honest, the part that hooked me the most was that introduction of this robed figure at the end.
Yes, that
I
is
will
what
say that is
really
the point that is
that
ready
got
to
me.
watch the next episode.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, it really this episode, I think, is, I want to say it's the perfect bring you in. This is the hug episode, I want to call it. This is the hugging episode. This is that episode that, all right, you got a little taste. Good, bad, or indifferent. We shoehorned in so much BS.
Yeah.
But now we're going to give you something a little, because this episode felt lighter.
It did.
It felt so less exposition heavy. And it gives us a chance to know who these people are. Not just Mary and John, but I mean, even still, we got to know young Mary and young John in Supernatural. And I think that
different young Mary and young
but they're different, but I got to give a shout out to Meg Donnelly and Drake Roger, Mary and John. They walked into some big shoes to fill.
Yes.
And they're doing a good job. I mean, John's doing a great job at being wide-eyed in this new world without being annoying. And
Right.
Mary is doing Mary is doing a really good job of keeping us grounded and learning about this world. And she has technically three other learned characters to feed off of. And it shows us why she's the leader. Each scene that she's in, we see why she's the leader.
Yes.
We find out why these people follow her. I mean, look, and for John, it's not even, and the one thing that I really like is that with John following her, it's not just the power of boners that has him following her. He legit cares that she finds her dad.
Right.
And everyone else is kind of the same way. They care about this girl finding her dad, but they're willing to follow her because she's not dumb. She might be abrasive. She might not listen, but she's good at what she does. She's very good at what she does.
Yes.
So I really give them credit for, and I'll say this one little bit before I say what I'm giving them credit for, but she's also not what I started to refer to as the Buffy the Vampire Slayer strong female character. I don't need anyone and blah, 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 blah. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, she needs help. She can do well without it, but she definitely needs help, and she does well when she gets it. You know, Buffy, as the seasons went on, she softened her stance and was a lot more willing to take help in certain instances. And I think that with Mary and the writing of Mary, they made her not just, they did a great job at not making her a damsel in distress or lost little girl, but also making her where she's knowledgeable enough to be capable, but she's not so capable that it's like, well, what do you need help with? You know what I mean? And totally. I really appreciate this. So yeah, this is definitely growing on me a lot.
I'm getting there. I'm just not there yet.
You're almost there. You're almost there. And that's cool. I mean, and I'll tell you what, we got to take a look at, and I'm going to see if I can do this without making looking like jump. Check out that gear. Like, you don't see a lot, but I mean, look at John rocking the vest and the beads. Like,
he's got feathery, like he's super feathery.
He is. I'll tell you what, though, I want that outfit. I really do. And of course, we don't get to see a whole lot of Mary's outfit, but I mean, even still, you know, I'm loving it. I'm loving what
Mary's
I'm seeing.
Mary's outfit was very, very.
It was almost scary. It
lit, like I'm gonna burst into flames on the ceiling.
Yeah, I was definitely waiting for her to just be in that whoosh. Yep. I was definitely looking for a yellow-eyed dude to show up and just catch 100%. Her playing.
100%.
But no, this was an episode, and we'll go into it a little bit more in our ratings and our feelings and our ideas behind it. I mean, you want to talk about Mary and John's outfits. I mean, even when they were undercover going to see the one kid's dad, they did a great job at prepping it up. Even they did. I mean, they're doing a really good job at going into these roles as these sort of these hunters that are chameleons that can blend. You know, so I don't want to.
John's self-doubt too.
Yes, we did. We saw a lot of John's self-doubt as well with his place in this group, not to mention the fact his place even in the world, in an existence. And I think that the one thing that we're kind of missing, and I think this is probably why John is so super into this, is the PTSD that he's suffering from being in the Vietnam War. This is keeping him so busy that he doesn't have time to think about the war.
100%.
Yeah, he wants this girl to find her dad, but at the same token, he wants to be a hunter, so not only can he find out more about his own father, but so that he doesn't have to think about the atrocities of war.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Totally.
So let's bring Bartender Smiley into this. We'll give our final analysis, and then we'll give our rating system. So Bartender Smiley, how do we do this again? I'm totally confused and I forget. I'm sorry, dude.
The Plotaholics rating system for the movies is a pretty simple system. Basically, they rate movies based on how many shots it takes to get through them. So if you got a good movie and you get through it all the way sober, then it takes 0 shots to get through the movie. And then if you got a really bad movie, then it could take up to 5 shots to get through the whole thing. I think you can try to figure out the middle part yourself. So what can I get you?
All right, so Melinda, what do you think? What is your rating on this?
I there's probably a 2 shot. I'm still settling in. Not quite there yet, but it wasn't like last week where I was like, you know what? I'm done. This isn't supernatural for me. So, we're starting to get to know more about our characters and starting to get a little bit better of a feel for who they are and what they're about. Like I said before, I'm not sure how I feel about seeing what the Akrita look like. But I am open to seeing where we go with that. And I'm really interested to see what happens with that character at the end, that hooded character.
Okay.
Who is that? What are they up to?
Okay. So I'm gonna give this a 2 shot rating as well, but it's a strong 2. It's one of those where this is one of those episodes where granted this felt like a throwback to Supernatural to me. Like we're right back in the early days of Supernatural, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I like the fact that these characters are getting to know each other a little bit better.
Yeah.
These characters are starting to gel as a unit now. And we're starting to see the strengths that each character brings to the table. Even the dialogue just feels like they're more comfortable as actors in this episode. And I felt like this episode was kind of run of the mill until we got to the very end and we saw the hooded figure in the Akrita. So that's why when I say, yeah, I'm giving this a 2 shot rating as well, it's a strong 2. Like it's a 2 that maybe if this episode could have had a couple of other subtle differences from the parent show, I could have seen fit to give it a 1.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I'll tell you, I can't wait to talk about episode 3 next week. It's going to be very, very hard for me not to watch ahead. It's going to be very hard for me not to watch ahead.
Okay.
Because when I was starting to research to, this episode, I saw a few of the synopsi from the later episodes, and it got me very excited. Like, I don't feel like this is a spoiler, but when we first see Samuel on screen for the first time, and seeing Tom Welling as Sam Winchester, Sam Campbell, Samuel Campbell, which I'm very excited for because I really want to see Tom Welling's take. I've only ever seen Tom Welling as Clark Kent and in Cheaper by the Dozen as Charlie Baker. So it'll be interesting for me to see him as a completely different character. And that's nothing against him. I mean, I know he's done other stuff, and that's just me because his stuff hasn't come across my radar, but I'm excited to see. And I'm excited to see, what happens later on in the season. So yeah, it's going to be very hard for me. Thankfully, I'm going to be way too busy this week to go binge crazy on this.
Gotcha.
But that's probably the only thing that's going to keep me from watching ahead. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to rewatch episode 3 Saturday afternoon before I go bowling, just to make sure it's, to keep it fresh in my head. So that way I'm not going to have a chance to go, all right, well, I'm feeling too lazy to get up. I guess I'll watch episode 4. You know what I mean? But I'll tell you, this is, from what I've seen of the synopsis and what I've seen from episode 3, if we don't get a season 2, I'm going to punch somebody in the nose. I am going to hit someone in the face.
Okay.
I am going to physically assault another being. Well, no, I'm not going to go that far. I will punch my body action system and pretend it's the face of a decision maker at the CW. for not giving me season 2 of the Winchesters. That's all I'm going to say. And I'll tell you what, when I see it for myself, I may change my mind. I'm free to do that. But no, in all seriousness, all jokes aside, I'm very excited to talk this next episode. And I seriously think that this next episode is really going to get you.
Okay.
I think the episode 3 is going to be the episode where you go, it belongs.
Good, because I've been waiting for that and I haven't had it yet.
I think you're going to get it this time around. If you don't, then I'm going to be really, really disappointed in one of us.
Okay.
So, with that being said, make sure you check us out on Thursday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard, 7:30 Central, and 5:30 Pacific. Where not specific. You will specifically join us at 7:30 Pacific. I mean 5:30 Pacific. I can't even get it right at this point.
Cool.
Where we're gonna be joined by our third amigo, Katie Salidas, aka Madam Salad Ass herself, and we're gonna be talking about The Mandalorian. And I'll tell you what, man, this next episode I'm very, very excited for. I can't wait for Wednesday. Like, I'll tell you what, man, these shows are definitely getting me to a point where I'm getting kind of pumped.
I'm just waiting for the next episode of the Bo-Katan show.
The Bo-Katan show.
Bo-Katan show.
Oh man, but you know what? This week's Mandalorian episode is going to be directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. So you know she could have been Bo-Katan. You never know. So theoretically, this is the pseudo Bo-Katan episode yet again. Bo-Katan show. So there you go.
All right, I can get behind that.
So make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the Plotaholics YouTube channel. You can check out all of the episodes of the Plotaholics podcast that have been uploaded here to YouTube, or just search the Plotaholics wherever you get your podcast to check out the show that started it all, that got us to this point, where we talked movies. Shane Wilson and I talked movies. And I'll tell you what, if the Plotaholics land is like supernatural, then Shane and I each share being Sam and Dean in our own specific ways. So yeah, we're definitely gonna. But no, we're make sure you check these out. Like, share, subscribe, check in on the stuff. Leave your comments, and we'll probably when we do these live, you know, we like to have the conversation when we talk about these things.
Yes, that makes it so much easier to. I mean, if you saw our last Mandalorian episode, we kind of got some bullshitting at the end, and it was great. But
right.
I mean, Bryan and I could talk all day about this stuff, but it's fun
Absolutely.
to interact with y'all and kind of talk about what's up and
absolutely
how it all goes.
Absolutely. And just so you guys know what's going to be coming down the pipe, once The Mandalorian is done for the season, we're going to be talking. We're going to be doing our primary trio of Tann talks, where we're actually going to be watching and discussing Firefly. Now, for me, I have not watched Firefly. I know of Firefly. I've just never watched it. So I'm going to be going into Firefly, brand new eyeballs, watching it. And then once we're done, we're going to discuss Serenity, because technically Serenity is our follow-up to Firefly.
I really don't know how you've made it this far and not.
I ain't got time, man. I'm a busy man. I got stuff to do. I'm kind of a big deal. You know,
I hear that, but
I got a YouTube show going. I got stuff to do, man. You know?
I know, but I mean, you're not talking about a show that went off the air last year.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I was busy back then too.
Better late than never.
Yeah, you know, I had stuff going on, and you know, it was just that kind of meatball sandwich for me back then, you know.
All right. You get a little bit of a pass.
Yeah, a pseudo pass. I'll take a pseudo pass on that.
A little bit.
So this episode of the Winchesters, before we go, there were only 2 ratings for it, so it hasn't really kicked the tomato meter, but both of its ratings, it got a 4 out of 5 when it aired from Megan Benke from TV Fanatic and Rebecca Fishbein from the New York Magazine / Vulture, she's also a top critic. Rebecca gave it 3 out of 5 and Megan gave it a 4 out of 5, which, hey, two. That's a 100% positivity rate as far as I'm concerned. And then, of course, episode, I'm sort of looking ahead to see how the ratings have gone. We only got a couple of ratings in a lot of these episodes so far. Not a lot of ratings, but the show in and of itself seems to be looked at as certified fresh. So, we'll see more and more and more how this goes.
Yeah. I'm curious to see kind of where we go from here, because I don't know.
What's the road so far? But I think that we're really gonna have a good time. Oh, here comes Anita. You make time for Firefly. Well, that's what I'm about to do. That's what I'm getting ready to do. I'm finally making time for Firefly. Besides, how many times have any of us in any sort of fandom have looked at something and say, man, I wish I could see this again for the first time?
Yes,
well,
I will tell you that. I am excited to see you experience this for the first time.
Fair enough. Okay. There we go. So
yes, you're right.
Yeah, I know. 100%. I always have a point eventually.
Eventually. We'll get there.
Eventually. We're getting there. All right. So, like I said before, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Join us Thursday evening where we will be discussing The Mandalorian. And we'll be back here next Monday talking Supernatural. The Winchesters, episode 3, which is titled Your Lost Little Girl. All right. So, we will talk to you guys next week. Have a great one.